Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our highly anticipated webinar titled Elevate Your Security and Observability Game by Redefining Data Pipelines. I am Vikas, your technical assistant for today's session. Before we dive into our engaging discussion, let's quickly go over for some housekeeping items to ensure a smooth webinar experience and delivery. First, please ensure your microphones are muted throughout the session to minimize background noise and any interruption for the speakers. Second, utilize the chat box on your screen to ask questions, share thoughts, and engage in discussion with fellow participants. Don't unmute yourself during the webinar. Third, our speaker will address your question during the dedicated question and answer session at the end of the slides. Feel free to submit your queries through the chat box only. Fourth, if you encounter any technical difficulties, please reach out to our technical assistant team and they will assist you. Fifth, please note that this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be available to all registered participants for future reference within 2 to 3 days. Now let's go to further parts. So I'm thrilled to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Kumresh S., a renowned expert in security analytics domain and a product manager at Cribl. Mr. Kumresh brings a wealth of experience and expertise in data security and product management domain. Without further ado, I will hand it over to Mr. Kumresh to introduce himself and the fellow speaker. Over to you, Kumresh.
Thank you, Vikas. So, hi everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join today's session. I'm Kumresh, and I will be taking you through some of the interesting topics, such as like the observability. What exactly is observability? How is it relevant? How is data pipeline relevant with observability? And what are some trending problems? How to solve them? So these are some of the things we will be going through today. And after I go through some of these on a theoretical level, we have Mr. Miran here, who is a SIEM consultant. He's a security expert with more than 10 plus years experience. He will be guiding you through some demo of a product we'll be showcasing. So we look forward to the session and feel free to ask any questions in the chat box while the presentation goes on. So moving on to the agenda, as I had explained, first I'll briefly introduce what observability is and how data pipeline is relevant to observability. I'll take you through some of the key challenges faced by security teams and IT teams. And I'll introduce you to the product called Cribl, which helps address these issues. And lastly, there will be a live demo session, which will be run by Mr. Meera. And after that, there will be a Q&A session where all of the questions received through the comment boxes will be answered by either of us. So what exactly is data pipeline? Before we jump into it, let's look at the difference between what monitoring is and what observability is. So monitoring in essence is just like it's tooling and technical solution that allows teams to watch over their environment based on predefined set of metrics and logs. So these are predefined. While in case of observability, it's a bit more holistic, and it refers to tooling or technical solution that allows teams to debug their system. And it is not as predefined as monitoring, it's more exploratory in that sense. So in a nutshell, monitoring allows you to find out that your system has failed, but observability helps you understand why the system has failed. And why exactly does observability matter? So earlier it was pretty much synonymous to application performance monitoring, but of the recent times, like observability has gone relevant in a lot of other domains such as infra monitoring, end user experience, DevOps, SecOps, and DevSecOps as well. So it is like recently getting more and more attention in a lot of these domains, and people are understanding why it needs to be monitored. And when it comes to observability, like first, let's talk the components, the three main pillars of observability. We have metrics, which refers to which gives you a high level understanding of what is happening in your environment. Then we have traces, which gives you an insight on how exactly it is happening. And logs give you understanding on why it has happened. So each of these are by themselves very useful information, and they do provide a lot of value. But the real value from comes from like interoperability of these three different types of data in a consolidated analytics monitoring tool. And the more complex your environment is, the more value you get out of monitoring these observability data. But when it comes to complexity, let's look at what sort of observability data, like let me go into how complex things have been getting recently. So first, in terms of data sources, there have been observability data can be from any of these types of data sources, can be pull data sources, push, TCP, UDP, API agents, and each of these data sources come with a variety of options within them. And oftentimes, major enterprise organizations tend to use multiple of these for their environment. So we have Azure Blob, we have Windows Event Forwarder under push, we have Amazon Kinesis under pull, TCP, UDP, we have Splunk HECF API, and agents we have Splunk Forwarder, Datadog. So these are the various sources that generate these observability data that we have just discussed. And these sources, these data generated from these sources are then directed to various destinations based on your use case. These use cases can be like cloud database management, can be security incident and even management SIM, can be for cloud storage, business analytics, IT monitoring. Any of these, there are different destinations for each of these specific use cases. And then again, each of these category have multiple options for you to choose from. So there are some customers who end up choosing multiple of these. So some of the popular ones being Splunk and SIM and Sentinel-1. And for storage, there's Amazon. There is Zabbix for IT monitoring, Datadog. And then for log management, there's Graylog and Aztec. So there are a lot of data sources, and now there are a lot of data destinations. So that just complicates the whole data pipeline scene by quite a bit compared to, let's say, 5-10 years ago. Now let's take a bit of time to understand about the poll that we have here. Vikash, back to you.
Sure. Let me share the poll. Is it visible, everyone? Sorry, yeah. Just here the one poll actually. Just a second. Yes. The poll is live now. Please put your choices.
Okay, so
Sorry, guys. Yeah. We'll wait for 10 more seconds.
okay.
People are filling.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on, I explained about what these observability data are, what are the various sources of these observability data, and where these data end up for which purposes. So what are some of the key challenges that security and IT teams face when it comes to observability data and data in general? So the growing problem right now is that the data usage in enterprises is growing massively over the past few years, and it's been expected to grow by quite a lot more by 2025, where massive growth in data by about 175 zettabytes in a whole. And the average cost of data breach is going to be around 50 billion, and due to complaints breaches and whatnot, this is again drawing a lot of people's attention to the necessity of maintaining appropriate data and improving the security game. And lastly, we have, due to these reasons, we have a massive increase in the number of tools being used and the complexity of IT infrastructure of these organizations. And about 54% of organizations tend to have more than 6 monitoring tools. So what this implies is that there are a lot of sources with a lot of agents installed in them, taking the data to a lot of different destinations, often taking the full fidelity data to the end destinations, even though the end destination may not particularly need it. So just looking at this diagram, you can see how complex the IT infra has become right now. And it can only be expected to get more complex going forward. So giving you a short input on how what are the key pain points felt by customers with regards to like data flow. First, obviously, the data observability volume is extremely huge and it's being cost prohibitive. Then the vendor migration is cumbersome. So basically, if you choose a specific vendor, it is very hard for you to eventually switch back to a different vendor based on your needs. You don't have that flexibility right now because it is an extremely cumbersome process to do the migration. Then sending only the relevant data to the relevant tool of choice is again found to be difficult. Like right now, let's say you have Splunk agent taking all of the data to Splunk. If you want only specific data here, but you want to maintain other fulfill the data in a different storage, it is a bit harder to do so right now. And certain destinations require you to have like specific format for the data to be in a specific format in order to be useful. And not all data needs to be stored long term in storage, like tool of analysis. You don't have to, let's say, store all of your data in Splunk when only a certain part of it is needed for your security operations. And lastly, data duplication is going to have a significant cost, impact on cost. Sending the full data to several different destinations is going to affect your resources. It's going to affect your license to cost. And these are some of the major problems that people feel with the current data growth and like the IT infrastructure. Now, the budgets are simply not keeping up. Data growth is extremely exponential, and it's 27% compound annual growth rate, while the IT budgets are more linear. So it is only going to be harder for organizations to be able to address the like issues that we had just discussed. So let's look into another poll item. Back to you, Prakash.
Sure. I can share the poll.
So what is your biggest pain point?
What's your biggest pain point while there are four options while you're talking about the observability and the data pipelines? Is it the sending the same data to too many destinations? Is it the performing the complex transformation before using data? Or its ability to filter or reduce data while sending it to your tool or destinations? Or need to archive good fidelity data in long-term storage like SIEM, or might be some other. Please, Ari, we only have 60 seconds to complete this poll. Yep. Let's check the results. I mean, 10 people already have read that. So the poll result is showing that the most of the people are facing the problem of complex transformation before using data. So Mr. Kumles will talk about this in future slides. Yep.
Yes, yep, that is understandable about how it is difficult to perform transformations, especially on the fly before the data reaches your destination. I will cover that as well in the coming slides. So moving on, what if you had the choice now? Like we talked about these problems being faced in the IT landscape and about how budgets aren't keeping up. But what if you had the choice and flexibility to do the migrations you want to do when you want to do? And what if you had the flexibility to use whatever tools you want to use and to scale when however you want to scale? And what if you could take control, reduce the risk, sanitize the data in flight before it reaches your destination? And what if you can just observe more and spend less? Like, what if you can reduce the license costs or like storage and hardware requirements and people time cost that's being used? Like, what if you can reduce all of these while still improve the value you get out of it? So what if you have like a single tool sitting in your data pipeline that can assist you in getting all of the data from various sources, do the processing you require in the flight, and then sending it to the destination of your choice in the format of your choice with the content of your choice. So that exactly is what Cribl is. Now, let me give you a brief introduction of Cribl as a company and then go into how it addresses the various issues we have discussed. So Cribl is a technology innovator. It has defined the observability pipeline market, and it is known for being its vendor agnostic approach where it doesn't matter what the source is, it doesn't matter which vendor you are using your source and which vendors are your preferred vendors for the destination. Cribl will assist in any of these cases. And it is a hyper growth company with more than 400 employees globally, and it has strong experience in the whole observability space until now. And recently, it has also achieved a major milestone of hitting $100 million annual revenue, annual recurring revenue in just 4 years, which is extremely fast for a company of this scale. So it has solid financials and it is backed by major backers like Sequoia, Redpoint, etc. So this is a brief about Cribl as a company, and the problem they had saw through was what we had gone through so far, and this is how they have decided to address these problems. So this is a value proposition of Cribl sitting in the middle of your data pipeline. So first, it allows you to collect data from any source. It doesn't matter who the what the vendor is, and you can send the data to any observability tool. It can then enrich data while on the fly. Like you can add context to the data, such as GeoIP, cloud metadata, or custom table database. You can do that in this as part of the data movement before it reaches the destination. And you can reduce. This is again one of the key use cases for Cribl. It can help you reduce, like you can reduce fields and you can reduce unimportant events before it reaches the destinations. And fourthly, it can help you transform, like data can be converted to any format, or it can be reshaped as may be necessary in your destination. And one of the key use cases here is the masking or encryption. It allows you to mask or encrypt data before it reaches your destination, which is again found to be a huge use case in terms of huge use case for like financial organizations and banking organizations. And fifthly, we have routing. Like it allows you to send collect data initially, regardless of the vendor, and then you can send those data to whichever destination you want in the format that you want and to the extent that you want. You don't need to send all of your data to all of your destinations. So this will help quite a lot in addressing your license issues and your resource utility issues. And lastly, we have this replay capability, which again connects back to routing, where you can send full filtry data to a cheap storage, so that in case you're required to refer back to these data on a later stage due to compliance reasons or any such reasons, you can always send this data back from the storage of your choice through Cribl to the destination of your choice. So these are the major value propositions of Cribl.
Congress, before we move on to the next session,
Okay.
there are a few questions in the chat box for you. Would you like to have a look on that?
Yes, of course. So my colleague Miran will be asking these questions for a couple of minutes.
Sure. Thank you. So the first question
Here we have is from Suhail Ahmed. Right. So this is a log management solution. No, Suhail. So this is not a log management solution per se, right? But this is a log streaming platform which will help you extract, transform, and load the data from sources and to your destination of choice. So this sits in between your sources and destination. So destination would be the log management solution. And we have another question from Sanjay. Is SNMP supported? Can I pick up SNMP traps? Yes, we can pick up SNMP traps using Cribl also. So Cribl out of the box supports the SNMP traps election also. I hope that answers the questions. Okay, yeah, I'll hand over to Kumaresh again.
Thank you, Miran. So I have just gone through. I've just gone through the various value propositions that Cribl brings. Now let me visualize it visualize some of the use cases that Cribl provides for you. So when we say routing, we have a data set. We can send that, we can perform transformations in Cribl and send the filtered out or the reduced data to the destinations of your choice. while also maintaining a full fidelity copy in a destination of your choice. So this is what we say when we what we mean when we say routing. Now, reduction. So this is just a sample of field-based reduction, where Cribl allows you to take off unnecessary or duplicate fields and send it out to your destination. Now, it is possible to, like, Cribl offers a lot of flexibility when it comes to reduction. You can take away, you can literally just handpick whichever fields you want and send those alone to the destination. And there is also another type of reduction, which is instead of reducing based on fields, you can also reduce based on events itself. You can drop events. So there can be some low value events where you can only maybe need 1 out of 10 such events to be to still have a eye over what's going on. Like you can do such sampling based reduction as well. Cribl allows you to do that before it moves on to your before the data moves on to your destination. And next up, I briefly mentioned replay as a capability that Cribl offers. So basically, let's say there is a full fidelity copy of data in your Amazon S3, and a couple of years later, you have been required to refer to these data due to compliance reasons. You can always use Cribl to redirect this data through Cribl back to Splunk without any additional integrations or anything required. And this is again the key like use case that is particularly useful in health sector and in financial sector. Cribl allows you to mask, hash, and encrypt data before it reaches your destination. So what do we mean by masking, hashing, and encryption? Like, let's take the CCN for example. Now, if you mask it, it is partially hidden, but it retains the format, so it can still be used for analytics. Likewise, for hashing, it is irreversible, but it maintains its uniqueness. So it again can be used for analytical purposes without leaking the sensitive information. And encryption just completely encrypts the data, but there is also an option to decrypt this data in your destination, for example, Splunk, using an add-on that is custom add-ons made just for decryption of this encrypted data. So this level of data obfuscation is made possible thanks to like Cribl's transformation capabilities. And what are some of the projects where Cribl can help? So there are XDR, you may have XDR initiatives, like you may want to evaluate multiple tools simultaneously. And without Cribl, what you'd be doing is individually add agents for each of these tools, get this data in your destination, and then evaluate. And that is going to take a lot of time if you want to evaluate multiple tools. What Cribl helps with is it allows you to like collect data from a single agent. It doesn't matter what agent it is. You collect the data once and use that same data to give that same data to any of your destination in order to evaluate them. So this speeds up process by quite a bit. And then there's the data lake strategy. Of course, like you don't want to store your all of your data in your tool of analysis because that's just going to be extremely expensive, and it is also going to affect your performance while you're performing searches and whatnot. So Cribl helps in like with the replay capability that I had just mentioned. You can you'll be able to store your logs and records in agnostic formats in cheap blob storage so that you can refer back to them later. And likewise, Cribl helps with security toolings, like cloud migration. It helps with SIEM consolidation. You can you'll be able to simplify the data pipeline by having Cribl sit in the middle of the pipeline, and helps with consolidation in case of merger and acquisition. And it also helps with security and IT data, IT ops teams data sharing. Like, let's say your security team needs certain data, but your IT team wouldn't need that. So instead of creating data silos, you can just have the IT team access the same data just by masking the data that's not needed by the IT team. So this is again something that Cribl allows you to do. And lastly, for compliance and data retention, you are able to store your data in like data lakes for long periods of time and not worry about SIM license cost taking up, getting consumed due to just data storage. So these are some of the and other projects where people can help are like when it comes to SIM renewal, you want to evaluate other options when you're renewing your SIM. This allows you to quickly evaluate multiple tools and then like you can also use Cribl for getting rid of your data ingestion and backlog. So I had mentioned this earlier, but instead of this, Cribl simply just allows you to speed things up by quite a bit. So these are the various projects in which Cribl provides a lot of value. So that covers what I had wanted to explain. Now feel free to ask any questions you may have had based on this presentation in the chat, while I hand over the rest of the presentation to my colleague Meeran to provide a quick demo on how Cribl works. After you, Meeran.
Thank you, Kumaresh. So before I go into the demo, right, so we have a couple of questions in the chat box. I'll quickly answer those. Right. So the questions are from Dwarikanath. Right. So he's asking that will Cribl help to minimize the data store? Right. I'm not exactly understanding the question here, but I'll assume that you're referring to the databases we have, right? So will Cribl eventually help to minimize the data store usage is what I'm understanding from this question. If that is the case, it does not necessarily replace the databases, right? But when we say it can help you to archive data for a longer period of time, it helps you to store the data in your database or in your storage solutions like S3 or a file system, right? So for a longer period of time. And we have another question. Right, so just in Splunk, we need to write transforms.conf and props.conf to filter the data. Will Cribl give simple method to filter? Yes, Cribl can help you to quickly filter the data using the UI, right? So we all know how painful it can be to write props and transforms configurations with regexes and the syntax references for transforms, right? So Cribl can help you with this simplification of filtering in the UI itself. So I'll also show you how it can be done in my demo. So just to answer your question, right? So it helps give a simple method, but not only helps, but it also helps to enhance the filtering capability, right? So in Splunk, we can only do a filter based on events, right? So you cannot necessarily drop fields within that events. But in Cribl, you can do both event level filtering and field level filtering also. Hope that answers the question. Feel free to post your questions in the chat box while I showcase the demo. Let me present my screen. Just 1 second. I hope everybody can see my screen. Right. So this is the Cribl landing page, right? So this is the landing page that we see when we log into the Cribl, right? So in the landing page, it quickly highlights what are the features available in Cribl. So you can see Quick Connect is one of the features to connect the sources to destinations directly without using any configuration files or backend access, etc. So we have something called routes, which is more sophisticated than a quick connect. So routes allow you to connect the same data source to multiple destinations, which in turn will actually help you to apply filtering based on the data source and the destinations also. So it also gives a highlight of how many pipelines we have, routes we have, quick connects we have. We'll jump on to what pipelines, routes, and packs are in a minute now. So before we jump into the features of Cribl, let's look at what are the sources that Cribl supports out of the box. Let me just uncheck that. So if you look at the sources here, Cribl offers out-of-box supports for most of the default or standard data sources in today's IT environment. We saw in one of the slides earlier, right? So it starts from collectors. It can collect data from Azure Blob or databases or file systems or GCP, etc. And it also supports receiving data from push-based sources like Splunk or syslog or Windows Event Forwarders, etc. It also supports pull mechanism where we can pull the data source from pull the data from the sources directly, like Kinesis, Firehose, or SQS or S3, etc. So these are some of the high-level data sources that Cribl supports out of the box. Let's look at the destinations also quickly. So Cribl provides support to Splunk as a destination. It can send data to Amazon S3. It can send data to blob storage or Google Cloud Storage. You can send it to New Relic. You can send it to Kafka, Elasticsearch, Datadog. So all the leading SIEM solutions and observability solutions are supported out of the box as a destinations by Cribl. Right. So we looked at the data sources and destinations. So we'll also look at what what sort of data routing options we have, right? So we have something called data routing in Cribl, which will help you to route a single data source to multiple destinations, like I mentioned earlier. Not only route, right? So you can also apply filtering or transformation or enrichment conditions on that data, right? So that is the specific use case of routing. We'll also quickly look at the Quick Connect example. So Quick Connect is mainly used in test cases, right? So where you do testing in your pre-prod environment. So you want to see how the sources and destinations are connecting properly and how the data format is coming on the destination, etc. So these are tested using the Quick Connect option. So here you can just drag and drop the particular data source that you want to connect to any of these solutions you have on the destination side. And you can also apply packs on top of that. So packs I'll explain in a little bit. So while connecting the source and destination, you can also apply the packs, which are eventually the data filtering or transformation rules, right? So let's quickly look at the pipeline. So we have something called pipelines in Cribl, which are nothing but the data rule sets, right? So it actually helps you to apply filters or apply transformation rules, apply enrichment logic or encryption logics on top of the data source. So Cribl also has something called packs, right? So packs are nothing but the pre-built repository for dedicated data sources, right? So you have something similar to Splunk base, right? So where you have apps and add-ons for different data types. So it is very similar here. Cribl offers multiple out-of-the-box packs for a high-level data source filtering and transforming as well. So if you look at the packs here, you can see the Cisco ASA pack and CrowdStrike. We have something for Cisco. So not only that, I mean, it has a whole repository as well. So you can just pull it from the GitHub repository, and also you can create packs yourself, the custom packs that you want for that particular data source. Also, you can import it from Git, like I said. So after creating or after configuring a particular pack, what you will do is you will link that pack in a pipeline, right? So that is essentially linking what sort of source and what destination that source connects to, and what are the data enrichment rules or filtering rules that applies to that pipeline, right? I'll quickly show you one of the pipelines we have here. So if you look at this pipeline, this contains all these functions here, right? So functions are nothing but the features that Cribl offers out of the box. So you must be familiar with eval and regex extract if you are familiar with Splunk. It works a similar way, but like someone asked in the chat, right? So how Cribl can help simplify the filtering of the data without configuration files. This is how Cribl helps, right? So you can write the regex in the UI and actually compare the the before and after scenario of the same data source, right? So whether your regex works fine, all those things you can compare before sending that data into the destination. That is one of the key highlights that Cribl can do on the fly. So drop is another function where you can filter based on a particular keyword or particular event type. You can filter and drop that particular event, right? You have something called sampling where you can sample 10 out of, I mean, 1 out of 10 events. All those high level advanced filtering mechanisms are available out of the box. If I just click on the function, I'll just quickly show what are the functions available out of the box, right? So if you look at the screen, these are some of the functions that are available in the standard category, right? So we have aggregations, we have DNS lookup, we have drop, like I said, we have dynamic sampling, eval, Lookups are very useful in Splunk also. And we have masking here, which I will also show in my demo use case. So if you look at the formatters, we have something called Ceph serializer. If you're familiar with QRadar, you know QRadar supports receiving the data either in Ceph or leaf format. So the Ceph serializer will help you transform the event from let's say a JSON format into a Ceph formatted event, right? So that the QRadar destination is able to receive that particular information. And we have the advanced functions like chain, clone. We can write custom code and do some customizations on the incoming data. We have something called trim the timestamp and unroll the XML logs. So these are some of the advanced functions that Cribl provides out of the box. I'll just pause for a quick uh, second and see if there are any questions on so far whatever we discussed. Okay, if not, I'll move on. So we looked at the data sources, destinations. We saw what pipelines are. We understand what Cribl packs are, right? So let's see how it works in a use case here. So this is one of my use cases I have. So I'm collecting Palo Alto data, right? This is one of my routes I have. I've disabled the rest of things for simplification purposes, right? So if you look at the Palo Alto data that I'm getting in, this is the Palo Alto route I have. And inside the route, I have two different set of routes where I'm applying filtering individually, right? So if you look at this route, this is just a pass-through route where the raw data is retained without any alterations, right? So this is the route name. And here you can select the pipeline that you want to apply on this particular data source. And you can also select the destination here, right? So you can select Splunk. I have Splunk S3 and I have Greylog also here. So you can select the destination to send the data to. That is the first route I have. And the second route for the same data, I'm applying a different pipeline here, right? So I'm applying a different pipeline from one of the Cribl pack to sort of filter the events based on my requirement, right? So I'm applying custom functions here to actually filter some of the unwanted data that I might not need in the SIEM solution I have, right? So how does it look in Splunk? So here we can just see what are the data sources that are coming. So I'm just, for simplicity purpose, I'm just renaming the index like Palo Alto logs without Cribl or with Cribl. So I'm just quickly showing you this.
Before moving forward, we have a few questions in the chat box. Would you like to have a look on? Sure.
Let me take a look at it. Thus, data masking on sensitive information can be performed in Splunk. The question from Satish Kumar. Yes, Satish Kumar, to answer your question, yes, data masking can be performed in Splunk, but there are some limitations, right? So it can only do masking, but you cannot do data encryption and decryption in Splunk, which you can do with Cribl. And is there any index need to be created while ingesting from different source? Yes, you can create you can create index here in Cribl, right? And you can send data to that particular index. So just like how you would create an index in Splunk, you would have to create the same index in Cribl also for it to process and write the data to that particular index, and then that will be sent. So index is added as a field here, right? So it will be added to the existing event and sent to the particular destination. In this case, it is Splunk. We have another question regarding restrictions on using JavaScript with Dribble. So it's not really a restriction, right? So the out of the box code that I mentioned can be leveraged to use JavaScript. So in fact, Dribble uses JavaScript expressions for filtering the data sources also. But I mean, you cannot really use outdated JavaScript modules per se, but you can use custom JavaScript codes and expressions in Cribl also. Right. We have another question from Suhail. How difficult it is to set up Cribl in our existing setup? So this is, this depends, Suhail, right? Depending on your requirement, whether you want high availability for Cribl, we have something called disaster recovery requirements. So if the requirement is straightforward, you just want Cribl setup and collect data and filter and send to destination. It is very easy. The timeline will be around 2 to 4 weeks max, right? So if you want HA and DR setups, it will take probably a couple of more weeks, depending on the restrictions in your environment. Yes, so Satish is saying password or any social security account example. So I'll show you an example of what we did with credit card information, right? The banking information. I'll show you how we have actually masked, hashed, or encrypted the data sources using credit card information. I'll show you in the demo. Right. We have another question. The most pain area for most organizations is data growth. How Cribl will help us to minimize those, and if yes, is it expensive than Splunk? Right. So the data growth, I'll take this question in two parts, right? So the data, when you talk about data growth, Cribl can help you control how the data growth is handled in your environment, right? So Cribl can help you streamline this process of data growth if you're only looking to handle this data, right? So if you're looking for saving cost on your SIM license also, like in this case, Splunk, right? Cribl offers you various options to filter and drop events. So this will obviously help you in data handling also, data growth, and also it will help you reduce the license cost on SIM solutions because Splunk is basically calculating license based on the incoming volume, right? So Cribl will help you reduce this incoming volume per day by dropping the low value data in your environment. So it is your choice to select and drop the events that is not required for your use cases. Right. We have one more question.
Take the other two question in the question and answer session. We have a dedicated session at the end.
Sure.
Yep.
Yep. Right. So I have the same scenario with Windows events also. The logic is similar, right? So we have something called Windows unaltered, and we have something called the altered data, which will actually modify the actual Windows data. Right? This is just an example of routes that I have created. So let me introduce to the Cribl pipeline that we created for data obfuscation, right? So this is one of the pipeline I've created to mask that sensitive information in credit card logs that we receive. So this is a sample event that we created, right? If you look at the raw log before Cribl processed it, right? You can look at, so this is some mask data. I'll show you. So this will be at the end, right? So if you look at one of these events, you have something called an index that's added, and you have card information, you have credit card information, and the merchant and city. So this is basically one line raw event, and I'm applying this pipeline. I'll just explain what this pipeline does also. So it basically matches this regex and replaces with this JavaScript expression, right? So this regex is out of the box available. I'll also show you that in a moment. So, but first look at, sorry, first let's look at how this data looks like after it is masked. So if you look at this, so the same card information is available here, which we are not masking in this case. We are masking the credit card number. So we are masking the first 8 digits of the number and keeping the last 8 digits number transparent for the use case references. So same way, let me disable this and I'll show you how Cribl can hash this. So the same event. So before it looks like, so before it looks like this, you have the index name. The data format is similar, just for simplicity purpose we kept. And if you look at the data after it is hashed, you can look at this credit card information. So I'll show you how it looks like. So if you look at this credit card information, it is hashed, right? So this is how Cribl helps to hash this particular information also. And the logic will be very similar. You just apply the matching regex and choose the mask function and select the hashing algorithm. In this case, I've chosen SHA-256. So the last example I have is the encryption, right? I'll quickly show you what is the unencrypted data looks like. So if you look at this information, it's very similar, and we have, just for simplicity purpose, added the index name here. And how does it look after it is encrypted? You can see the encryption here. So the encryption is applied only for this particular field, right? And if this data is being sent to Splunk, you can also decrypt this information in Splunk using the Cribl app that's also available in Splunk base. So both encryption and decryption can be done. And the logic is straightforward. You just apply the matching regex and apply the encryption algorithm here. So I'll just quickly show you the formatting also, because there was a question around how to filter and transform the data, right? So, so we all saw how the original raw event looks like before, and you can look at how it looks like after the Cribl formats it, right? So you can see the field extractions here. This is basically extracted in the JSON format, right? So you can look at this particular information that's also available here, right? So you can see the field extraction that's done here for all these events. So the green ones highlight the new field is added. So it's not modifying the existing field, it's just extracting the new fields here. Okay. So I'll quickly show you one last thing before I hand it over to Kumresh again. So I was talking about the regex expression and all, right? So this is the regex library we have for some of the common use cases we might face in today's environment. We have something called IPv4, email address filtering, visa, and credit card information, etc. Right. So this is just for our own reference. We have this library which we can also use. So that's all I wanted to show you guys in the demo session. So I'll hand over to Kumarish if there are no questions.
So that concludes the demo part of the session. Now moving on, have the Q&A session.
Yes, we have a few questions in chat box. Yes, if anybody has any question, please put in chat box. We will be very happy to answer that.
So I will quickly answer the question we have, right? So what if I don't have a syslog server? Do I need to configure one to use the system? So not necessarily, Sanjay, right? So Cribl out of the box supports receiving the data from network devices. It also supports data receiving from syslog also. So if you want to directly send data from network devices in UDP port, you can send by default directly to Cribl, not necessarily to have a syslog server. So we have one more question from Satish here. So group example regex expression. So unfortunately, we don't have that in the default library, but the regex format is very similar to what we use in Splunk, right? Yeah, it'll be very similar. Thank you.
So I think we are at the end of our webinar and it's already 12:52. We have one more question. Miriam, would you like to take this one? What are the data retention expectation in Cribl? How does Cribl handle fields, values, and length of time for data retention?
Right. So the data data retention is typically handled by the SIEM solutions, right? So it's not necessarily handled by Cribl itself, right? So Cribl helps you to actually, handle the fields, values, and length of the events and timestamp extraction. So the data manipulation and the handling part Cribl helps you with, right? So the data retention part is usually handled by the SIEM solution itself.
Great. I think Milan has already answered all of the questions which you guys had. Can you move to the next slide, Umesh?
Yes.
So yes, we have a third poll. Let me put it right. So this poll is regarding the demo of the Cribl. So you guys can put whatever answer you have. Would you like to have a demo for this or not? So we will arrange the demo for you in the meantime. Sure, sure. Thanks. This looks like that we are in the right path. Can you move to the next slide? Please? So after the completion of this webinar, we will share this particular deck and also the recording of the webinar with everyone who registered for the webinar. In the meantime, if you guys have any queries, then please feel free to send out or contact us in this email ID, amelia.fernandez@positka.com. And to know more about the Cribl and their advantages and other, there are some links. Although we will share this deck with you, so you don't have to write this down right now. And there are some other value proposition from Cribl to get certified and get the training. So yeah, so there is one. This is a Cribl University, and there is a Cribl download. So in Cribl University, you can do the free education. They have a lot of free educational module, and you can also get certified at the same time without paying any single penny. And also, Cribl do provide 1 TB terabytes of the free license for on-prem and cloud for the testing purposes. Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time. I think this particular session might be useful for you guys. And in the meantime, if you would like to contact us, please send an email or give a call to us. This is our email ID, and in the in 2 to 3 days, we will share the webinar recording and also this particular deck with everyone registered. Thanks. Thanks for your time. Have a good day.